New Year.
Happy New Year.
Honest and truly, you want to, I don't have like an agenda or anything here. We can just have a conversation if you have specific questions and we can talk about some stuff. I did want to let you know, and specifically, Jeff, I wanted to kind of have some conversations with you too. And obviously, just as a reminder, and let me pause for a second and say this. We're still very much in an exploratory phase here. Even though we're moving forward with getting an appraisal to understand what the real market value of this property is, there is nothing that has been decided in terms of that this is actually going to move forward. This is still an exploratory phase. And part of the reason I say that is because I've had, I can't even count the number of phone calls and emails over the last 72 hours, people with all these different ideas on what's happening and not happening and all that kind of stuff, and saying that this is already all determined, and it's not. We're still having these conversations. We're still exploring. We still want to hear from everybody. And that's why we're having that public hearing on January 11th. And that's why we had to announce it publicly so we could get the notices out there on January 11th. But it's all still very, very much exploratory in nature. The one thing I'm sharing my screen here with you of the property, because can you see my arrow, my little arrow here?
Yep.
Okay. I did walk down the property with our town engineer and our highway superintendent about this driveway and about what things may or may not maybe we could do. And one of the things, and I think generally at this point, what makes the most sense based on our conversations, if this was to move forward, I want to again say the tennis court's going to have to go. The tennis court is going to be in the way for what we're talking about doing in terms of changing the road. One of the conversations that I had with, and I think this was similar to our conversation with our town engineer, is about running the driveway along this northern border here somewhere. One of the things we were looking at as we were walking the property is if we were to do this and move this driveway over closer to this northern border and across this tennis court, we want to make it so that obviously any headlights are not shining in your house. And it's a unique situation, obviously, there. So one of the things we have to figure out collectively together, again, if this was to move forward, is do we angle it so that anyone who's using the driveway, which again, theoretically would be the three of you as your residents, along with your guests, so that their headlights are angling this way? Or would it be better to have them angle and bring it back further this way and keep them on this side of your house so that the headlights are not shining directly at your house? But it sounded like from the conversation I had with the engineer, it may make more sense to bring that whole entire driveway closer to the property line across this way and angle here and connect here so that the headlights are shining more in this area where there is no house, or maybe your garage area here, so they're not directly on your house. And then that driveway crossing obviously where the tennis court is currently. And then this would just be, basically this could be a parking area for you. This would be a stubbed area for you, because the driveway would then go this way and we would close off the driveway here. So you'd have a new driveway that comes in this way and then go up this way. Does that make sense? Or?
You know, I understand the concept. I mean, I'm not sure I'm too thrilled about having that stub into my house. I mean, I guess another idea, and again, like you said, you know, it's assuming this thing goes forward, another idea is to maybe have it go along the border up by the road and then have it loop down kind of where the bottom corner of the tennis court is now, and then hook back into, so if you move your cursor to the bottom of the tennis court, yeah, there. So it would kind of come down and then loop down and then catch back kind of where it is now on the property line. You know, it would eat up basically all of the tennis court, but.
Right. Well, we could certainly do that, because the tennis court isn't really, I mean, saving the tennis court isn't really a goal at all. I mean, because we've even talked about just taking the tennis court out. So we can definitely do that. I think one of the things that we also were trying to figure out is how to distinguish between the entrance to the park as well as a separate entrance that would be private for you all.
Yeah.
And trying to figure out if there was a split somewhere in this area so that access for your homes
Yeah.
was on one section with the access to a parking area kind of on another section. Anything is possible. I mean,
Yeah.
we could absolutely do anything. We could, if you prefer
Mhm.
to come down this way, that's absolutely something that we can talk about
Yeah.
and pursue. It's whatever, truthfully, it's whatever you guys would like best for you, as well as
Mhm.
just making sure that it fits in for what we're planning and stuff.
Yeah.
The
Well, I
other
mean,
thing maybe
Doug,
about,
Doug, just getting back to that, I mean, what what is best for us is not to have a park next to us. So,
sure,
so
and that
I
very well,
appreciate I appreciate you taking that into account, but just keep in mind that's our starting point.
sure. Well, and the alternative is that's fine. And then what you'd be talking about are probably 3 to 4 new homes, which
Yeah,
that's also very fine. That's okay. If
sure,
that's
sure.
the direction it goes.
Yeah, yeah. No, no, I understand. I want to make sure that, we're not misleading you into thinking that we're all thrilled about this. We're trying to go into it with an open mind, but
Sure.
we are not thrilled with it.
We agree. We agree with that, Doug. And you mentioned a minute ago that you had to get an assessment. You've got an assessment. It's been assessed for $1,000,003. It kind of puzzles us and it upsets us a little that Paul has gotten away with such a low assessment with 400 feet of lakefront right in front of our noses while we're paying right top dollar.
So a couple of things. So that's not a fair market appraisal, which is what we have to do, not an assessment. We obviously have a town assessor. They're two different things, an appraisal versus the assessed value. The assessed value, yes, is a very low assessed value, probably for what the property is, but the property has not changed hands since 1971. And that is traditionally when you have a right sizing of a market value on a property is when it changes hands. And that particular parcel, and we see that around in all the different municipalities. When you have a piece of property that hasn't gone to market in that long a time period, a lot of times there is a big difference between what the fair market value and what the assessed value is. Only an appraiser can determine that. And that's why we have to get an appraisal to see what the actual fair market value is of the property.
And when are you expecting that appraisal to be done?
Actually, they are working on it today. I may have a number on Monday, the 11th, or somewhere thereabouts. But in the next week to 10 days, I should have a number from the appraiser.
Doug, maybe that's you started out talking a little bit about the process. Maybe now would be a good time to walk us through exactly what the process is, so we have an idea of what the timeframes are and where the critical points are.
Sure, sure. So, and really this next step is the appraisal. We've gotten to the point where we're at now. Do you want me to start kind of back from the beginning? So let me just touch on that part briefly. So, we've got a number of different community surveys that have been done, whether it was the 2003 comp plan, the 2011 comp plan, the 2020 comp plan. We have an extensive Parks and Rec master plan that was done in 2017-18 and adopted by the town board in 2018, where they did a feasibility analysis of each of the parks. And they looked at, okay, what is it that's needed and what's not needed in the community. Every single one of those surveys, every single one of those documents came back with, there is a desire for additional access to Canandaigua Lake.
Of course, Doug, you understand that, when it's obviously everyone's going to say that it's a matter of how willing they are to pay for it and
Sure.
what's the impact on everybody else. I mean,
And
if you ask anybody if they would like $1 million, they're going to say yes, but if it costs them $2 million, they're not going to want it. So I take that with a bit of a grain of salt. I mean, it's easy for
That's the point, though. That's where we're at, is to
Yeah.
figure out how much it would cost and how much it would cost everybody,
Yeah.
and whether they're willing to do it. We're not
Sure.
there. We can't tell people how much it's going to cost them because we don't know yet. So
Understood, but I'm just saying that that those to me are kind of anecdotal surveys. They're not true. Would you like this if you had to pay that kind of surveys?
Well, were the surveys multiple choice?
No. So these surveys that were done over, I mean, you're talking about a long period of time, 2003, 2011,
Yeah.
2020, and then the Parks and Rec Master Plan was done in 2017 and 2018. Each, and I can tell you, I can't tell you what happened in 2003 and 2011. I wasn't with the town of Canandaigua, but I can tell you in 2017 with the Parks and Rec Master Plan, there was a whole series of community engagement meetings where they had, and the same for the 2020 plan, where they actually divided the town up into 7 different components. And they went around and had community engagement meetings with the residents of those particular areas over an extended period of time. And I can tell you that when those are done, there's an opportunity for people to just provide feedback. What is it that you would like to see? And access to the lake comes up always.
Yeah.
Always, always, always.
Sure.
No matter what it is, no matter what context it is, it always comes up, access to the lake. And so the residents have been very clear to us from across the town. And that's the other thing I think we a lot of times forget. The town is a very big town at 62 square miles, and it's very diverse. We've got obviously a lot of residential area right around the lake, but then we've got residential neighborhoods around the rest of the town. And there's just as many people that live north of the city of Canandaigua in the town of Canandaigua as they do on the west side of the lake. And then there's a whole nother section that's over on the east side of the lake. So it's a very broad town with a lot of different components. It's got 25 different zoning districts. It's a very unique town in that it's very diverse.
Okay.
Have you ever asked though, out of those people, if they utilize the current parks? Because one of our biggest concerns is, I mean, we go by Ananda all the time, and Butler, obviously I drive by it, every day in the summer, and there's never that many people there. So out of those surveys, did you ever ask, well, do you use the current parks?
Yes, so we actually, as part of the Parks and Rec Master Plan that was completed and the engagements that were done in 2017 and 18, there was actually a facility analysis done as part of that. And obviously the question that you ask is, do you use that? That's a very broad question, and people are going to have varying opinions on that, right? So you may drive by it and say that it's not being used, and I may say that too, versus other people may say, I go and I can't find a place to park. I have had that. We've had, I can tell you examples of where I've had park staff contacting me on a Saturday or Sunday saying there's no room left for parking. What do we do? So it's an opinion type situation, right? I don't know how to tell you, whether or not, any given day. Yes, of course, it's weather dependent. Parks tend to be weather dependent and other things that are going on. I can tell you that Miller Park is a new park for us. And there's times that people go by there, and I've heard this, I don't know how many times, where people will say, nobody ever uses it. What a waste. And then I can tell you there's other times where people say to me, it gets used all the time. That's such an awesome park. It's personal opinion,
Sure.
in varying times and a whole variety of different things associated with it.
Let's move on from that to the next step.
To the process.
Sure. So then what we did was the town board directed me to execute a purchase agreement with the seller. The purpose of doing the purchase agreement, which has now been executed, is that it documented basically some basic terms on what this would look like, again, if we were to move forward. And we're still in that exploring phase. Even though there's a purchase agreement, we're in this exploring phase because we had to agree on some basic points, whether or not this was even going to be able to move forward. And a big point of that is the value. Mm-hmm. The seller is saying, hey, we will not take less than 5.375 million. If the appraisal comes in at 4 million, we're not going to be able to buy it. They're going to sell it to a developer. It's my understanding. I think that there's some sort of developer that's interested somewhere in that ballpark. They're going to sell it to a developer, and we're going to say, okay, have a nice day. But until we get that appraisal, I'm chasing my tail. I don't know until I get the appraisal.
Okay. So then, so let's say the appraisals come in and they're satisfactory. They average out at 5.4. Then what happens?
Kathy, were you going to say something before I talk about that?
No, I was just going to say that the purchase agreement is not a contract that binds us to buy at this point. So
okay, that's a good point.
I wanted to make sure you know that I wouldn't have
Yeah.
agreed to it if that were the case.
Okay.
There is a purchase agreement signed?
Yes. Yes.
It's
So, and
contingent on a lot of things though, so.
yes, a whole lot of things. There's all kinds of contingencies associated with that. And let me just touch on that for a second. One of the points, and I know this has come up with some of the emails that I've seen that is just full of false information, is the purchase agreement, the whole purchase, even if the appraisals come in, is contingent on what's called a permissive referendum. If the voters end up exercising that option to execute the permissive referendum and they say no, it's not going to happen. And I know one of the reasons why that's come up is because as we were going back and forth, as a lot of negotiations do, things get changed. And what happened was there were two different places in the agreement where it listed the permissive referendum. One got crossed off so that it wasn't a duplicate, and one got left in. And then the resolution actually also said subject to permissive referendum. So that is still in place.
Okay.
We would not move forward if that permissive referendum piece was not in place. So just so everybody is aware.
What does a permissive referendum mean?
So that gives the electors of the town of Canandaigua the option basically to override the town board's action, whatever that action is. In this particular case, the action theoretically would be that if the town board chose to purchase the property and 5% of the electors of the town of Canandaigua, it would be 5% of the entire town, circulated a petition that said, no, we don't want you to do that, then it would go to a vote of all of the residents in the fall, and then it would be up to the residents of the entire town of Canandaigua to make that decision.
I see.
So just to back up, so assuming that there is agreement on the price that the appraisals come out,
Hypothetically, right?
hypothetically, and I know it's a big hypothetical, that means that the board could execute that purchase agreement without going to vote?
Correct.
That's what it means.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so this vote would be after the fact. You would execute the agreement, and then the town would have to scurry around to try to get 5% of the signatures. How does that?
No. So, okay, so let's just take a step back for a second. So let's go back to the process question for a second, and then we'll come back to that. So this next meeting on Monday, January the 11th, is the public hearing.
Okay.
Yep.
And that's where we're at with this process, is we're gathering input from the public.
Yep.
I can tell you there's a lot of people that say this is a great idea. And then there's people that say this is a really, really bad idea.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay. We want to hear all of that input, whatever it is, because that's going to help the town board make the best decision based on all the comments that they hear, all the comments that they receive. So we'll have this public hearing on January 11th. And part of this is how the timing works out. Remember I said that we may have that appraisal number on January 11th?
Mm-hmm.
We may not. And the other thing is, we're not going to, and I had a call earlier today and I was having this conversation. The person said to me, will there be an action by the town for the town board on January 11th? And I said, I can't promise you that the answer is no on that, because the town board may direct me to go do something, may go ask me to look into something else, but there would not be an action for the town board to just say, go buy this piece of property. That's one thing that will not be on that agenda. The town board has to direct me. The town manager, the position, gets their direction from the town board. So the town board may say, okay, now that we have an appraisal of hypothetically 6 million, I don't know what it would be, but just for the sake of discussion, let's say it is 6 million. They may say, okay, continue now with the environmental assessment aspect and continue or provide us with some more renderings and some site stuff about what it may look like. But I don't for a second believe that there's any of the town board members that are ready to say, yes, move forward with this. We're still in that fact-finding phase right now.
But Doug, but they could. I mean, it's not.
Well,
I mean, they could though, right? They could at that meeting say.
Since
okay,
they authorized me to put together the agenda, I'm telling you, it's not on the agenda. So
Exactly. And we have no desire to just move ahead. It's not like a secret society where we live here. We're taxpayers too. I took this job because I want to try to do the right thing by the people. And that, not like I'm looking to pull the wool over anybody's eyes. If everybody came forward, even if I really wanted to do it, I wouldn't do it. If it's not what the people want, I'm not going to vote for it. And just, Doug, if you could say, if that's the case, and it just comes down to us as town board saying, the people of the town of Canandaigua are not comfortable with this. If we said no to it, does that bind, is the town somehow now in a bind for having signed this purchase agreement?
No, because we have that ability. So we have all those contingencies intentionally. And the seller knows that. I just had that conversation with a representative of the seller today at the property today, where I said, I've got a lot of people that I'm anticipating being at this meeting on January 11th. There is still no guarantee that the town board is going to move forward with this. And you know what the response to me was? That's okay. If the town board decides no, it sounds like there's a developer ready to build 3 or 4 houses at least on that parcel and move forward with that. So they're going to sell one way or the other, whether it's to the town or a developer. And at this point, they are interested in working with the town and going through the process with the town, and love the idea of preserving it and offering it to the community as a park for the unique aspects. There is no denying there are some unique aspects of that parcel.
Sure.
But if that doesn't work out, they're fine with a developer building houses on it.
Yeah, no, I understood. And again, I'm really just trying to understand the process, just
Sure.
to make sure that, we know where our ability to influence things is and isn't.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want you to know there's no preconceived notions on any part of the town board other than we think it's, like I said to you last time, it's a beautiful piece of property that I would personally hate to see chopped up into a development. This property is a once in a lifetime. This properties don't exist anymore. I happen to think the assessed value is going to be pretty high because of that. There's no other, properties at that price. Did you want to say something, Dick?
I was thinking about Wanda's driveway, but that looks like it's cut out. It's
Wanda's driveway, if you can see the screen here,
right.
Wanda's driveway crosses right across the very corner of the top of the property. So that doesn't really come into the rest of it. It's just a piece that crosses the property. So I don't think that there would be any impact at all. I've talked with a representative. I've talked to one of Wanda's children as well as a representative of Wanda, and we've talked about that. So.
Is the property line in the creek?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So Doug, just to get back to it so I understand. So you get the appraisals. Let's say that they are above the average out above the 5.3. Let's say the 6, like you said. We have the meeting on the 11th. Meeting on the 11th, I guess the board would most likely, you listen to the input. The board would most likely put you in action to do some environmental surveys and some other surveys.
Yeah, I would anticipate. So again, I don't really anticipate a resolution on the agenda. So it would not be a formal action, but I would anticipate continued basically exploring. If we know the number basically on January 11th, if at 2:00 in the afternoon, I find out that the appraisal was 4 million, we're done, right? The conversation's over.
Yeah.
If it comes in and it is in that ballpark, and maybe if the second appraisal is done, the seller also has to do an appraisal, keep in mind. Yeah. And then we take the average of the two. That's the agreement. Yeah. But if we have both of those numbers, I have to push the agenda out tomorrow by noon. I'm not going to have those appraisal numbers before noon tomorrow. There's not going to be anything on the agenda relative to that. The town board's rules of procedure require me to publish the agenda the Wednesday prior to the meeting by noon. So that's not going to be on there. So in terms of next steps after that, what I do anticipate is at that meeting on January 11th, the town board continuing the public hearing and taking additional comments, continuing to hear from residents, continuing to hear input, maybe there's a meeting scheduled for January 29th, and then the town board's next meeting after that would be on February the 8th would be the next meeting after that. I could easily see continued conversations, again, depending on how other information comes in. Part of that is we're still gathering information. We're not only gathering input, but we still have to gather the logistics of the information on the values, whether or not this would work, what capacity is there, what opportunities are there, the financing. There's a whole variety of different balls that are up in the air that we've got to keep exploring as we go through this process.
Sure.
And a big part of that is the bonding aspect too. And so we then have to go through that process. So this isn't going to happen. I know one of the calls I had earlier today was the person said, well, your purchase agreement says you'll go to closing by April 1st. And my response is like, yes, the purchase agreement says that, but we all know, we've all bought homes in the town of Canandaigua. Sometimes that happens, sometimes that doesn't, right? Sometimes those closing dates get moved and you have to negotiate things and a whole variety of different things. In the greatest idealistic world, could it happen by April 1st? Hypothetically, maybe. But we have to go through municipal bonding and a whole series of different things also. So I'm not even sure that if we were to move forward, that would be a time period that we'd be able to do that or not. The one thing that the family has said is if we do move forward, they would like to have some sort of a ceremony this summer while Paul is still with us down at the property. That is the one thing they have repeatedly asked for, in addition to some other things.
Just to summarize, is that there's most likely going to be at least 2 or 3 more public meetings after the one on the 11th before any action is taken by the town as far as executing that agreement, exercising that agreement.
So well, in terms of completing the sale, let me say it that way, right? Because we've already signed the purchase agreement, okay? And there's all kinds of things that have to also fall into place for that all to keep moving forward.
Yeah.
And the financing still has to be taken care of, that side of the things.
Yeah.
So even with the financing, we have to, as we go through that process, we would have to, again, establish another public hearing. Whether the town board on January 29th establishes a public hearing for February 8th would be dependent on whether or not we have a lot of those other answers that I don't have right now. If I don't have that information, then what I'd be talking about is on February 8th, establishing a public hearing, whether or not the town board directs to call a special meeting in the month of February, or whether or not it goes to March the 15th, which would be the 3rd Monday of the month. For March, there's a lot of moving pieces. So all I can tell you is definitively, there's not going to be a full-on acquisition of that property on January 11th.
Okay. And there will be at least one more public meeting after January 11th, or is
there would probably be more than that. There would probably be at least 2,
okay,
if not 3, because we still would have to have public hearings on the bonding and everything.
Yeah.
else.
Okay.
And I'm not saying anything because I can tell you that I'm not comfortable with the information I have right now making a decision, but I'm sure that my fellow board, I can't speak for them and I'm only one member of the board, but there's no desire to just pull the wool over anyone's eyes just to get this done.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Kathy,
Yes.
can you picture a situation where you would put the referendum into the process, not by petitioning, but by the board saying, there seems to be enough controversy here. Let's put a referendum in and go along with that.
It's too early for me to say that. I can tell you that procedurally, I don't think the sellers would be willing to.
I can answer that. I've been negotiating with them. They won't. They'll just sell it to the developer. They're not willing to take that time.
So unfortunately, that puts us in a situation where we have to, this just came up too for us, trying to get as much information as we can. And if it gets down to the point where we're not comfortable for whatever reason, we just say no, or I can't speak for others as well.
Yeah.
Just a minute. Do you really believe that the Kellogg's, if the meeting on the 11th is not positive, they're going to sell it to somebody else, slam bam?
They will not wait until November for this to go to a vote for a mandatory referendum. I absolutely can tell you there is no way, based on the conversations that I've had with the 4 children and the diversity and the all the back and forth that we've had now for months, they will not wait for the town to go to a mandatory referendum process in November. No.
But they won't wait to, you mean to sell it through Mitch Pearson? Or they've got a guy on the string that'll pay them $7 million or 6?
I believe that from the sounds of it, there's a developer and there has been a lot of interest in the property. They have had a lot of showings of it, but they would not be willing to wait for the town to go through that process. They've already, that was one of the first things I said to them. Would you let us put this up for a vote next November? The immediate answer was no. They're not willing to take it off the market and wait and let it sit that long. They said absolutely not. They would just as soon not work with the town and walk away.
I mean, whether they can sell it is a separate issue, but
Yeah.
if
I think they're
there's
bluffing.
no,
Well,
they might, maybe they are. I mean, that's the
Maybe they are.
business, right? So we can only do what we can to call that bluff within reason and within the law and protecting everybody's interests.
Sure.
So again, if I feel that the public hasn't had enough input, if they're moving us too quickly, people aren't comfortable with it, I'm not gonna vote in favor of it. But if we have enough information, me individually, us as a town board, the people of the town, then we do it. But we wouldn't know unless we went forward. You know, there were other properties, that, the Cook's property came up, beautiful piece of property. We just talked about, wouldn't that be nice? And the place was sold.
Mhm.
So we couldn't even finish our conversation. So when this came up, we said, let's look at it at least. And so the only way to stop that train is to say, let's look at it.
Yeah.
And, we didn't have years, which would be nice if we did. It would be nice if someone came in with $6 million and donated it to the town. But then we'd have, we still have the issue of what to do with the property, right? I mean, that's always the concern. So whether that's true or not, from dealing with any realtor, any situation, we don't know. So, we're going on the assumption that these properties are selling.
Do you have the lake frontage on the Cook property and the price?
I did. I don't remember offhand. I did, but I looked it up. I don't remember offhand. You can look at it. I believe it's on Encore.
We do have that. We do have that. And I can tell you that what I'm being told is that Lakefront right now on Canandaigua Lake is selling approximately 15,000 to 16,000 a linear foot.
I'm interested in whether, if the property is appraised at $6 million, what does that do to our properties? I'm thinking that our property value, if we were to want to sell our property, would be down from where it is now. But if this property sells for that much money, what happens with our assessments? Because a lot of times it changes your assessment when a property like that is sold at a high price. And
so great question and a very good question. So there's two different ways to look at that. So let's look at it first of all in this hypothetical scenario that this becomes a town park. If the town, again, just using a hypothetical number, let's say the town buys this land for $6 million. What does it do to your assessments in terms of that higher sale price? Nothing. Why does it do nothing? The reason it does nothing is because you have single family residential homes and we have a public park. They're not like uses. And I've already confirmed that with the assessor as well as a series of different assessors that I've talked to about this and legal attorneys relative to assessments. Two different types of uses. So it's like comparing apples and oranges. So it doesn't, that in and of itself doesn't directly mean that your house, the assessment then goes up. If it were to sell for residential, then yes, your assessment probably will go up because what will happen, and I can tell you it's coming, is a townwide reval. The reason a townwide reval is coming is because the state sets what's called an equalization rate. And our equalization rate is dropped because the price of per lakefront as well as homes all over the town of Canandaigua, the prices are selling, or homes and property is selling so fast and at such high prices that the state determines our equalization rate, and they've said that we're no longer at 100% assessed value. that the properties basically in the town of Canandaigua are underassessed. And that happened to us a few years ago. I don't know if you remember, where, and maybe you knew or maybe you didn't know, the town wasn't assessed at 100% valuation. And so actually the town residents had to pay a higher school tax rate, for instance, than the city residents did, because we weren't assessed at 100% valuation. So that is something that's closely looked at, but on the basic premise of single family home, your home versus a public park, there'd be no direct connection because it's two different uses. But if it was sold for single family homes, then likely, yes, your property, the assessment would go up.
Doug, how about from the standpoint, I mean, another thing, obviously our big concern is not so much the assessment as it is the market value.
Mhm.
And I don't think anyone's going to argue that market value of our house is going to go down when we have a park next to us. I've done some research on it, and there's, matter of fact, there's a number of municipalities that give discounts to homeowners adjacent to parks to help compensate for that, which is all well and good if it's an existing park and you buy into it knowing that. But when you try to shoehorn a public park into a residential neighborhood and you negatively impact the market value of those homes, how does the town compensate the people for that?
So there's a couple of things. So again, and I've heard that before, where people say, oh, if you put a park there, it's going to negatively impact everybody's market value of their homes.
Well, it's precedent. It's precedence. I mean, I'm talking.
But I can tell you that there's precedence the other way too, and that's not for me
I've
to
never
determine.
seen it.
That's not for me to determine. That's up to the assessor to make that decision. But again,
no, I'm not talking about assessment. I'm talking about market value, right?
No, I understand. So, but again, you've got situations in the town of Canandaigua even where we have constructed a new park. Miller Park is a brand new park that was just constructed, and there are 7 residential properties adjacent to it. The value, and I believe one of those properties has changed hands, and the value actually went up. And we're actually in the process, I've asked the assessor to help me document some of that, to look into that, as well as to look at other cases around the state of New York. And what I'm being told, and again, this is just what I'm being told, is that there is no documented direct impact to the value in terms of being negative or the market value lower. Now, with that said, there are something in the assessment formulas, assessment, not market value, assessment formulas called influencers. And if someone is able to prove that there is a negative influence because of a neighboring parcel, whether that's residential or public park or whatever the case, then that is factored into the formula of the assessment, not the market value, but the assessment. Yeah. And so that is something wherein sometimes if there's a negative influence, that does affect the assessed value. I can't speak for market value on that, but on the assessed value specifically about that.
Yeah.
Have any properties down by Ononda sold? I mean, that.
Ononda is a little different. And again, it's an existing, it's not taking a residential neighborhood and sticking a public spot into it. It's an existing thing. So people buy into it knowing that they're next to a park, which is different than having a park inserted next to your residential neighborhood.
Except when you go to sell, the effect is the same. I mean,
what I'm saying is that I bought that property for a certain amount of money with the idea that it was going to be an investment and worth X amount of dollars. And now by the town's action, I believe, and I get Doug has a different opinion, but I believe, and I think I can find precedents to show that the market value of that property has been decreased, which basically equates to the town taking my money. Right. And the precedents I've seen so far is somewhere around 15 or 20% based on the use of the park. And for swimming access, non-motorized boat launch, it's probably around 15%, which for my house is somewhere north of $300,000. So I want to know who's going to compensate me for that.
Well, I mean, so here's the other way that I would respond to you. Would you sell your house for what it's currently assessed for?
I think so, yes. I mean, we just built it a couple of years ago, so it's, I think, a pretty true market value.
Okay. But you also may find, truthfully, that the value has gone up this past year, because that's what I keep hearing from realtors and everybody else around.
Yeah.
That it actually may be even worth more than what the current assessed value is.
Well, that might be true, but what I'm saying is that when I go to sell it, if there wasn't a park next to me, it would be worth more than there is if there is a park next to me.
But we've also, and again, this is a huge like hypothetical thing, but you can also document, whether it's the city or the town, city of Canandaigua, there's lots of examples where people move into an area because there's a park. Look at all of the homes in certain areas around some of the city parks where people actually locate there because they want the park there, right?
Yeah,
So in the same,
if you're going to spend $3 million on a house,
Right.
you don't want to be next to a park. I can tell you that right now.
And I get what you're saying, but you also have to realize that your house, the value of your property right now is enhanced by the fact that there's no development there. How much the value of your property will change if there are 4 houses there, I don't know, right? I'm not maybe that's a question to ask as well for you, because it's your property.
Yeah, no, and you know, we're also having it appraised, also bringing people in to give us professional opinions on that.
Okay.
You know, like I said, I've seen precedents for it in other areas. I would like to understand myself what the proposed impact is. That's the feedback I'm getting, is probably 15%. I mean, I know it's up for discussion. You know, if residential property goes in there, I'm assuming that it's going to go up in value. I mean, if you put in nice houses next to your house, then generally your property is going to be worth more. I'm sure they're going to put in nice houses there. I don't think there's going to be 4. I think there's probably going to be 3 at the most. So to me, I guess what I'm saying is that, you know, again, as I started out the conversation, we're still in the listening phase. But that I think is going to be a big problem, because like I said, I think that the value of my property is going to go down if this becomes a park versus it being developed with a few very nice homes. And I just want to be, you know, number one, I don't want to mislead anybody. I just want everyone to know that that's the way we feel. And, you know, if there's something to compensate for that in some way, you know, we can discuss it. If there's not, then there's going to be a problem. And it sounds like there's not really a way to compensate for that. So I don't know.
I can't say that I have $1 million for you. If that's what you mean.
No, I'm only looking for 350,000. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm just kidding.
Aren't we
I'm just
all?
kidding. But I'm just saying that, you know, this is I agree with you 100%, Kathy. It's a unique piece of property, but you got to understand that it's in a residential area right now. You know, we built that house there after looking at it for years, that piece of property, talking to the Gleasons, grooming it. We finally saved up our money, bought the property, built the house. We certainly did not do that with the idea that we were going to have a park next to us. So
You had to think, though, that there was a possibility that something would change there, right?
well, we knew that there was going to be a change. We assumed that somebody would buy it, probably put in a couple of houses. We did not. We had not. It was the last thing from our mind to worry about having a park put in next to us.
Well, you know, that's why we have zoning, is to protect the uses of the land.
Mm-hmm.
But to go back to the park, if we could compare to the Ononda situation, you know, 25 years ago, they had an auction to figure out the right price.
Mm-hmm.
And the town of Canandaigua had a caveat under the table. They said, would you give us a chance to match the high bidder? So that the town wasn't bidding the price up. In this case, you guys are supporting an outrageous price that the Kellogg's put on that land. And I think that if you don't get it, their next best option is going to be about $3 million.
I mean, I hear you. And like I said earlier, I mean, we're chasing our tails. Only a certified appraiser can make that call. I'm not a certified appraiser. So once a certified appraiser makes that call, then we'll know what the value is.
Okay.
So this is a section of the town code. Dick, you had asked about zoning. You're absolutely right. Zoning is there. This is part of the residential lake district. You have 3 permitted principal uses. Number 1 being a single family dwelling per lot. Number 2 being public parks, and number 3, public safety facilities. And those have been in place for many, many years. Those are the permitted principal uses in the residential lake district.
Thank you.
So you don't have to go through any rezoning to put a park in there?
No.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Who does the appraisal? Is it is it appraiser from outside, or is it from the town?
Yes, so it's a independent appraiser. I solicited a bunch of different realtors to ask who is an appraiser that they would all recommend, including a gentleman who has told me that he is not at all in favor of this. And everybody gave me the same person, Jim Legret. So that's who I asked to do the appraisal for us. I believe he will provide us with an independent appraisal that will be a true market value.
Completely independent.
Yes.
Is there just one appraiser?
The town has hired one appraiser and the seller is hiring one appraiser.
Oh.
So we'll get 2 independent appraisals.
Do you know who the Kellogg's hired?
I do. Give me a second and I'll tell you. I
Thank
do
you.
have that information. Yes.
Hey, Doug, while you're looking for it, I think I've got an easy one for you.
Sure.
There was been some rumors going around about the town perhaps buying property across the street in the gully. What's the latest on that?
I've heard so, it's kind of funny. That's one of the unique things about my position. I know Kathy feels the same way. I hear so much about what I did or supposedly didn't do or whatever else. It's just like, wow, I can be in that many places at the same time. That's interesting. So no, we are not. I can tell you that I am not having any conversations with anybody about anything on the other side of the road. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Nor am I, nor have I heard anybody. And Pete, you can call me anytime to ask,
Yeah.
public
No,
information.
we just wanted to hear it from your
But I'm
mouth.
just saying in general about any of these things, you can
Yeah.
call
Yep.
any one of us.
Well, that's why we
appreciate
set up the Zoom meeting, because then we all hear the same story at the same
Yep.
time.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Rather that than people saying, I heard,
Yeah,
I've heard,
that's what we're trying to. We're trying to sift through the rumors from the facts.
and it's a difficult process, even for me, and even being an attorney and reading the process.
Yeah.
I have to constantly say to Doug, now what's the next thing, and look it up and make sure that I'm, because I don't want to bind the town to something that, that I can't follow through in, or that might have negative consequences for the town. So, so anytime anyone has any questions, that's
Okay.
what we're here for.
But in regards to that, even if you're not looking now, is there, do you have any future envisions of expanding this park?
This particular park?
Mm-hmm.
No.
No.
It would. So just while I have it here in front of me, Kevin Bruckner is the appraiser that the Kellogg's had hired. Kevin Bruckner is his name. Right. So here's the thing. We cannot bind the hands of a future town board. Whether or not a future town board 10 or 20 years from now ever knocks on your door and says, hey, would you consider selling your house or your property to the town for expansion of a park? Who knows? Do I see it happening? No, because this is a very unique parcel itself. And I don't know that it's never going to be another Ononda. It's never going to have, I just don't see the use of it having all of those cabins and all those things that Ononda has. So I don't know why it would ever need to be larger than what it is. But again, I can't, you may have a town board down in the future, 10 or 20 years from now, that may have some other crazy idea. So.
Yeah. Okay. I appreciate the candor.
Yeah.
Just build a casino.
Yeah.
Well, we could put a police station there, right? It said public service. That'd be the most expensive police station ever.
Yeah. Another question that's come up is when you said you're going to have kayaks and canoes going out, what is the requirement? Like, I mean, if we want to go out in our boats and obviously the neighbors and everything, and there's a lot of kayaks and canoes in there, obviously we have a concern. Are we going to be able to use our boat as frequently as we want and have no problems?
So kayaks are actually vessels in terms of navigation. I was talking with a police officer actually about that who works on the navigation unit in terms of that aspect. So obviously you try to be careful around each other. I mean, obviously it gets crazy at the north end of the lake, right? You see all the boats next to each other in the kayaks. And I know I even did it this summer. I was kayaking around boats, looking at boats. I thought it was cool. So, you have to be careful. So, but to your point, swimming areas, right? So there's usually any swimming area, there's like a buoy and you have to stay outside of the buoy. So that's something that we would want to work with you again, hypothetically, if this all goes forward.
Mhm.
But the swim area, I mean, you've got quite a shelf here is the way I would call it, a shelf in the lake. So the swim area would be somewhere kind of in this area. I really don't think you'd have any issue at all going out or even coming at an angle. We just would need to make sure that you're staying outside of the buoy areas. And it's the same thing that we have at Ononda. Every once in a while, somebody gets too close and we have to ask them just to be careful and stay on the other side. But, it's the buoys are there to just designate the swimming area so that someone doesn't inadvertently get hurt.
One of the things that we're obviously concerned with is projected usage. Have you got to the point yet that you've done any kind of projections on how much usage you would anticipate?
No, we're really not at that standpoint. I mean, one of the things that we had starting to have the conversation with is what would a parking lot look like? What would a cost of a parking lot be? How many parking places? I know in one of our previous conversations with the three of you, we talked about maybe making that area a no parking area if this was to move forward so that cars weren't parked along the roads. So, that's where you start to get in some of the engineering as well as some of the renderings. I was actually just talking with the town engineer today about that to try to understand, what options may exist and how big. I think, realistically, I think, and I'm waiting for them to tell me, but you're probably talking somewhere in the neighborhood of like 15 to 20 car parking lot. This is not going to be a large parking lot. Is probably realistically about where you would be because you have to have room for people to come in, turn around, go back out, obviously using the same entranceway. If somebody is bringing in a kayak or a canoe, they've got to have room to maneuver with that and then go, so this is not a large parking lot by any means. I can tell you that, and just for comparison, today, I don't know if any of you happened to see, I met some folks down at the property today and there were 8 cars together down there today. And we parked in that area. That's about the same size. Those 8 cars barely fit, but they all fit kind of in that parking area around the house and the garage there. And we're in the driveway. And then, so you'd be talking about, doubling that space. That I think that's realistically probably what you'd be talking about for a parking lot, probably double of that little parking area that's there now. And that's where I think we would, again, if this moves forward, the big if, but if this was to move forward, we need to work together to figure out, okay, where would the driveway go so that it mitigates any potential situation with the three of you and your access, and then keeping the public access and the way that they come and go pretty defined to keep them. Because, I've said this to you from the beginning, the last thing I would want if I was one of the three of you is have the public driving by my house on Tichenor Point Drive. So if, again, this was to move forward, I want to make sure we're working together to figure this out and lay this out and engineer and design this so that we're really limiting the public from driving up that way.
Okay. So the 15 to 20 car parking lot you're talking about, is that kind of limited by the topography, or is that what you anticipate as the load? Or do you anticipate that, that's kind of peak load and usually it's going to be less? I mean, how does...
It's mostly topography, but peak load, because we will have to have stormwater mitigation from that parking area. So I've got to have the space not only to have the parking lot, but then to be able to capture the runoff for that, to be able to treat that. So that's where the engineering aspect of all of that has to come in with the stormwater management facility and those types of things. That's not a pond. There's a lot of other ways to do that, rain gardens and that type of stuff. But we have to plan for that if we were to construct a parking lot.
Okay. So at what point do you do projections on usage and things like that? I assume that you'd have to do something to substantiate the need for it, right? I mean, to me, it's a little bit, the cart before the horse. You're buying the parcel without really knowing or having any projections on how much demand there is for it. I mean, I know you have anecdotal evidence from, the Ononda's bursting at the seams and this kind of stuff, but I would think that you would have to justify the money by somehow doing surveys and other things to show that, to understand what the demand is really going to be. I mean, you'd hate to build it, right, and have nobody come.
Right. So I wouldn't say that Ononda's bursting at the seams. And I know I've had that comment has been made to me also. Ononda is a treasure. Ononda is a very unique situation there. This will, truthfully, if this were to move forward, this is never going to be Ononda. Ononda is a very unique piece of property also. This is strategically located lake-wise. It's approximately, if I was going by canoe, just over 3 miles from this property down to Ononda, if I was going by lake. If I go by road, which I've driven, is about five minutes, give or take. And it's about a mile south of that area of German Brothers Marina, by lake again. But so here's the thing, right? The public has continued to say to us, we want more access. We want more access to Canandaigua Lake.
Yeah.
So that's what's driven us to explore this to this point. If the public comes back and says, we want access, but not this parcel, I can tell you, the town board's probably going to say, okay, and walk away from it.
I can tell you from my own personal research, because I've asked everyone that I can, other than, than you guys and people that are directly there, everyone's in favor of it, even if they have to pay taxes. And I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I had a thought in my head. It's like, you're not going to have a direct market analysis of, cost benefit. I'm going to use it 100 times. That's like I said to my husband when we bought a boat. If you're going to tell me every weekend we got to use this to get our money's worth, it's not worth it. But it's there. It protects it from overdevelopment. It's further protection for the lake. And it's there for people to use. You're not going to get, your money's worth per se. But what I want to make sure is that people feel that it's worth it to them, the amount that it's going to cost the town and them to have it, to preserve it, and to use it. I don't want to see it become overdeveloped, and it's not going to be an amusement park where we fit every piece of, parking. My vision is to keep it as pristine as possible, and for, to allow people to, use it, not to have like Ononda where there are cabins and, people doing whatever. But so just if you could just keep that in mind. So I don't know that we would do that kind of market analysis, like when you're buying a business and saying, how much is this business going to make? It's a determination that we have to make, which is somewhat of a gut and somewhat financial and somewhat what everyone's comfortable with. So I just wanted to let you know, from my perspective, I don't think you're going to say, if I'm going to buy this business, how much am I going to get in return? It's in some ways intangible in that regard. But I can tell you, if you ask, and I have probably asked now 100 people, every one of them is in favor of it. But that's their perspective. They don't live, but some people lived on that do live on the lake. So.
But I think, what I'm really talking about usage projections. I mean, I'm not talking about a cost benefit analysis. I would think that the town would do some kind of analysis of the existing parks that have water access, see whether they really are underutilized overutilized? How many days a year are there excess or excess demand that can't be handled? All of that. And then decide whether they really need another park or not, rather than anecdotal. And if they do need another park and this fits, that's one thing.
I
But
guess
to,
the
to buy
question-
it, to buy it as a land preservation is much different than buying it as a public park. And if
No, it is.
Yeah.
And I guess what you're defining as utilization, if you were to say to me, I go to Onanda maybe once a year.
Mhm.
So if you said to me, is it underutilized?
Mhm.
Probably is. But if you said to me, should the town sell it? I'd say absolutely not. So that's what I'm talking about.
Exactly. But what I'm saying is if it's underutilized, why do you need another one that's 3 miles away? That's what I'm trying to get at.
Because I personally like it. I think it's worth it, but that's what I need to find out from other people. So for me personally, that's a beautiful piece of property. The beachfront is wonderful. Having that opportunity to just sit there and look at that beautiful view, and have other people be able to do that. But is it worth it for everyone? I don't know. That's exactly where we are. So from your perspective, it's not.
I know that comment is as a taxpayer, not as if someone's sitting next door.
No, I get that's what my job is, right? I'm not just, like I said, if I had the money, I'd probably, if I had, an extra 6 million laying around, extra 6 million laying around, I might buy it myself, but it's not my money. So,
But if you live next door, would you want to park there?
I don't know. I'm being totally honest with you. I don't know. But that's why I'm talking to you.
Yeah.
I might, and that's what I'm saying, because I've had property, my last property that we owned, a beautiful view of the mountains. And I knew that if someone came across from me and built something, that it would ruin my view. Would I want to park there? No. But I might want to park over something else. So that's, I can see from your perspective, that's something that's not, that's not what you want. And I appreciate that. No, like I said, no predeterminations have been made. We're hoping to make it as palatable to you so that you would want that, but it sounds like that's not even a possibility at this point. I wonder if we could do something different with the driveway, if it looped to the south as opposed to over towards your properties. Would that make a difference? And I don't know, after speaking to the engineers, whether that would even be possible, but is there something that would make it okay for you?
Yeah. Again, we're just gathering information now, but I can pretty much tell you that we do not want to park next to us. If there has to be one, yeah, we can work together and try to make it palatable and all that, but we would, point blank, we'd rather not have a park next to us. I don't know if that matters or not. I mean, you talked a lot originally, and you are in good faith talking to us, meeting with us. You're telling us you don't want to cram anything down anyone's throat. So I guess, my kind of final question is, if we are just adamantly opposed to this and lawyer up or whatever, does it make any difference?
So here's the thing, and I was going to say this as Kathy was talking there too, and you asked a very good question, Jeff. You came at it, you were asking a question, and you come at it, I know, from a business and a very analytical background, right? You were asking a question about usage and that type of thing, but keep in mind, this is a political decision. That's why you have 5 elected town board members. This is not a analytical, yes, that you are trusting them to be good stewards of the taxpayer dollars by electing them, but at the end of the day, it's a political decision, and they're doing their best for the entire community, the people in all 25 zoning districts of the town of Canandaigua, and they're trying to think and balance all of that. So, and even to answer your second question there, that it's, who knows? The town board is very much gathering input right now. The town of Canandaigua regularly gets sued. So I hear that comment all the time. Oh, I'm going to sue you. Okay.
And I'm not saying that, Doug.
No. I know you're not, but I'm just saying.
I'm not saying that.
But
I don't like
saying that's okay. If that's what you choose, we're not going to.
Yeah.
If you choose to go down that road, that's okay. You're exercising that option. Yeah. No offense. Okay.
No.
And we'll go through that process, and we'll let a court decide it if that's what happens. But there
But-
shouldn't be any, please don't feel like that you can't talk to us or communicate with us, because whether or not this goes forward or not, you're still a resident of the town of Canandaigua, and we want to work with you. We want to collaborate with you.
Mhm.
Even if this is the dumbest and worst idea, that's okay. So
No, no, I appreciate that. I just wanted to understand how much influence we really had over it.
the
You know,
public hearing process, I think, is a lot of influence. That's why we have public hearings, so that the town board members can gather and hear from residents and hear from the community about what it is that first step, what it is that you would like to see or not see.
Yep.
And here's the thing, you know, truthfully, here, I'm just going to tell you, like, for instance, there have been literally hundreds of comments about what a great thing and how the community needs more access to the public, right? Or to the lake.
Mhm.
And I know that there's 6,500 views or whatever, all that kind of stuff. We track all that data, right? And then there may be 40 or 50 residents saying this is the worst idea in the world, right? But that's why the town board gets to make that decision. They've got to balance that out. They've got to make that difficult decision after hearing all of that input. And that's why they're elected to make those decisions. And that becomes very difficult. That becomes very difficult, that they have to hear all of that and then make the decision. And so that's step one. And step two is, okay, if they're going to move forward exactly like what we talked about, if we're going to move forward and this is going to become a town park, what can we do to mitigate the situation, to make it at least more palatable to you as a neighbor who is not in favor of it, or maybe other neighbors that are not in favor of it?
Yeah. And again, we're just trying to understand where we are and how much influence we have. And it sounds like we have a vote just like anybody else, and we have a voice just like anybody else, but nothing more than that.
I can't tell you, am I muted? I can't tell you in my head how much, what you're saying. I can just promise you that, which sounds disingenuous, but serious, hearing that from a politician. I'm not,
I didn't say.
whatever that, for what that's worth, I can tell you that, I will listen to everyone and make the best decision I can based on that. I'm not a kid. My whole career as a prosecutor, as a defense attorney, I've learned that the only way you can sleep at night is you make the best decision based upon your ethics and your morals. Other than that, I can't promise you anything, but I can promise you that I will listen to everything. So
Sure.
I know that coming from a politician, that doesn't sound right, but it's true in my case. And I know it's true for the other people on the board too.
Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, it's a small town. We all live in it. I mean, we know you in and out of politics. So, we understand that.
And I guess the other alternative is, don't vote for me.
Too late now.
No, I'm up for re-election next year.
A quick change of pace. What is the story on the getting out of the 2% tax thing? I mean, we're running out of money in the town, and
you must be reading the same email that got passed on to me that's completely false. So the town adopted the 21 budget last fall, and that budget is tax cap compliant. So the town, like many municipalities all over the state of New York, traditionally overrides the tax cap the summer prior to adoption of the budget to give them the greatest flexibility when they go to adopt their budget. The 21 budget that we adopted last fall is completely tax cap compliant. So the resolution in the law that's actually on the town board agenda is actually to repeal the override.
okay.
So it's actually to make us completely tax cap compliant. The town of Canandaigua is in fantastic shape financially. We've done very well with investments over the years. We've got reserve fund money. We are tax cap compliant. I can tell you that we are used as a model everywhere.
We are, as far as municipalities go, one of the only ones that didn't have to override the tax cap in all of New York State. So because of we've gone through, the local municipalities got no money from any of the CARES Act, even though we were supposed to. Only the cities got money. Despite that, I was able to, put that budget together. And believe me, as I keep telling you, that's what we're doing, is we keep an eye on it and make sure. And we were very careful with this year's budget. And the fact that we didn't have to raise, to not be in compliance with the tax cap is pretty much a miracle. But we're in a unique situation in the town. We don't have, we have properties that are worth, that are valuable properties, and everybody wants to keep them that way. And I totally get that. So, that's also something to consider.
And the other question that I've gotten asked is why now? Why is it the town is looking at this? Well, exactly what Kathy just said. We're in a very good situation financially, as well as right now there's record low interest municipal bond rates. We just recently did a bond anticipation note and we got an interest rate of 0.55% interest. Incredibly low rates right now. So when you look at doing a big project, a big investment over a longer period of time, it's better to get a couple of percent interest versus 8 or 10% interest. Who knows where the market's going to go in time. So
yeah. Thank you very much.
Of course, anytime.
Thank you.
We're going to try to get my computer fixed between now and the 11th.
That would be great.
Hey, Doug, just one last thing. And again, thank you both very much for supporting us again.
Sure.
Just to make sure, we're out of town right now. Is the meeting on the 11th just virtual or is it in person also?
Just virtual by Zoom.
So I had no reason for me to fly home then, huh?
No.
Okay.
Please don't. And tomorrow, like I said, the agenda will come out tomorrow by noon and it'll have the Zoom link on it. And I was going to email it to all three of you anyway.
Okay.
And we'll make sure that you get that. There's a couple of other people that have asked me for that link. We'll also post it on Facebook and everything else. So everybody's got it. So.
Okay, great.
And if you get the appraisal before Monday, would you be able to tell us what the result is?
I don't think I'm going to have it before Monday. I really don't. I anticipate getting it sometime on Monday or a number sometime on Monday.
Okay.
But you will share it with us when you get the appraisal?
Yes. Yep. And that'll be, we'll
you.
announce that and everything. That'll be public and everything.
We have to, everything we do is public.
Yeah. And please also know, Kathy, I'll speak for, we really enjoy talking with residents. So if you want to do another one of these and talk about it, please, that's fine, anytime. So.
Okay. Well, thanks. We appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
Take care. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.